This conference will now be recorded.
All right. Good day, everyone, and thank you very much for joining Organizational Excellence Specialists for this important presentation about the state of organizational excellence around the world. I'm Sabina Posangiewski, and I'm here to help facilitate this session in support of Don Ringrose, who will be presenting the results of this interim report. And please take advantage of the chat for any comments and questions, and I'll make sure that we get these addressed at the end of the presentation. So over to you, Don.
Thanks very much, Sabina. Pleased to be here once again today to continue sharing the results of this global OE index that we've been compiling over the last 10 years. And we're getting super close to a great sample size that is giving us, for the very first time ever, a glimpse at the current state of excellence around the world by size, industry sector, and region. And in some cases, we got enough respondents to talk about a country, and we'll be doing that towards the end of the presentation. So with that, I'll start the presentation and just, Sabina, give me a heads up here, make sure my slides are progressing.
You're good.
Okay, great. This is a picture of the world, and we've got the world divided into 7 regions. And I know the print is kind of small, but we've got in total on this assessment that we've been doing very close to 4,000 respondents. And I'm going to be focusing today on the full assessment, which has, about half that number of respondents. But this is the assessment that really gives us a good view of an organization's culture against 9 principles that we know are common to high performing organizations, and the extent to which they've deployed their practices across 9 key management areas, again, that we know are common to high performing organizations. So it's very exciting to share the data that we've collected here. It's providing a nice clear picture. And today's presentation will be diving down into the key management areas to take a look at the individual practices. And there's 102 in total that will show us the kind of the degree to which organizations have deployed these practices and are getting good results. So it'll be very informative. A background on this study: started 10 years ago, and you can see groups that were very supportive of it. It's been led by organizational excellence specialists, and I have to call out the volunteer research team that we've had. I was asked to do this study, but there was no budget for it. And so I thought to myself, gee, how do we do this study with no budget? And so we've had this exceptional effort by volunteer researchers around the world. And I like to call them the rock stars because they've been absolutely amazing. The model that we're using for the study is the Organizational Excellence Framework. And this is something that I authored in 2010. It brings together all the principles and key management areas and practices that we find in leading excellence models and that have evolved over the years. So it's one that will be beneficial to everybody. It doesn't matter what excellence model they're using, or if they're using a different sort of quality approach, tool, or technique like ISO or Lean, Six Sigma, and so forth. Here are the 9 principles that we know describe a culture committed to excellence. Here are the key management areas where those 102 practices reside. And for micro-size organizations, there's the applicable practices are 50%, which is 51 practices. We use an automated assessment and reporting tool, makes this work a little easier for us to capture all the data and help us crunch the numbers, and then the analysis takes place. And well, the numbers are pretty easy and straightforward. I'll tell you, those open-ended comments are another thing, because we probably have about 1,000 pages now of open-ended comments that we have to make some sense out of. This is the variables that we've used in collecting the data that really provide a nice overview for us by role. You know, if the respondent is a leader, manager, staff person, or a category we call other, that would mean, let's say, a board member. Um, 4 different sizes: micro, small, medium, and large, on the basis of number of employees. Micro being 1 to 25, and then small being 26 to 100, medium being 101 to 999, and large being 1,000 plus. Type, we're looking at 3 types: government, business, or nonprofit organizations. There are 21 industry sectors according to an international classification. And then, of course, all the countries that we have around the world, and those countries are assigned to 7 regions given the World Bank analytical grouping. And so we've got their self-assessment ratings and open-ended comments on these principles and best practices. And it really gives us a really comprehensive view on what's going on in organizations around the world. And the thing I like most about this study is that a lot of people in the working population don't even know about excellence models. So this includes respondents that are using excellence models or something else to drive kind of quality or performance in their organization. And so it gives us a good view on current state. And we've been sharing the data as we've produced 4 reports. We've been sharing it far and wide, and going to international conferences in quite a few countries where we presented in person. And we do lots of presentations online. So we're really trying to bring this to all stakeholders because we know it's going to be a benefit to the excellence community, you know, with a view to where we're doing well, where we need to focus effort to improve, and where we learn from role models that are highlighted in excellence award programs around the world, and the working population at large, because we know from global research that only 20% of the working population is familiar with excellence models. So that other 80% aren't aware and don't understand excellence models, and therefore don't realize that there's a lot of results they're leaving on the table that they could potentially be experiencing by the use of excellence models. So this is a very informative way to make people more aware of excellence models so they can use them to their advantage. So the full assessment, we have 2 different assessments. The teaser assessment is just on the 9 principles, and we reported that at the last session. Recording is on our YouTube channel. This time we're diving into the full assessment on the principles and all the key management areas to give you a view of what's going on. And at the end, we'll take a look at several countries. So here's where we've got 1,641 organizations, good sample size across the industry sectors and regions, you know, predominantly business respondents, and you know, pretty good cross section across leadership, management, and staff. But you can see that management is the one that is particularly interested in being part of this self-assessment. Manufacturing and service, again, the service industry is got quite a few more respondents than manufacturing. Good distribution across size. Again, the medium size kind of jumping out. And we've got a good distribution across region, although we need probably to do a little bit more work in Latin America and the Caribbean to buoy up those numbers. I love it when we get, you know, 100 plus, because then we feel a little bit more confident about saying something about the region. So here is the data on the principles and the degree to which they characterize an organization's culture and the degree to which they're committed to excellence. And in the previous presentation on just the teaser assessment, we provided the data, and this data is actually quite close to that data. So it's good to see that it's repeatable on the full assessment. And you'll see that the focus on the customer is the highest rated principle, whereas prevention-based process management and data-based decision-making are are lower rated. And when we take a look at the scale that we use for the principles, it's this very subjective scale. It's the gut feel that people have about the culture in their organization and the degree to which these principles characterize it. And we ask them to use a scale from 0 to 10, and it's broken down into 5 categories: low, medium, medium high, and high. And so you can see that these numbers are, where they're falling in the on that scale. So medium high range on it for the most part, with the exception of the 2 principles that were lower rated. And then beauty of this study is these open-ended comments. And from that, we have these observations about what people are saying. This is kind of a synopsis of all those open-ended comments, 1,000 pages. And this is very interesting what people are saying about their organizations, where they have their strengths and their opportunities for improvement. And you see running through this information and the memorable comments that I'll share, that we have certain themes popping up, communication, education of people, pulling together as a team, communicating better and so forth. So keep an eye out for that. And the key management areas, there's 9 key management areas, and the last key management area is a combination of the last 3 items: continuous improvement and performance measurement. But I've broken it down into the 3 subcategories so you can see the differences here. And, continuous improvement is the good old plan, do, study, act cycle that organizations are using to improve. But when we dive down into performance measurement, there's measures that we use for each of the key management areas. And then there's measures that we use for the organization as a whole. So it gives us an idea what organizations are doing. And so as you look down the numbers here, you can see where organizations are relatively strong. Governance, customers, performance measurement for the organization as a whole. And then you can see where they might need to do a little bit of work on planning and the suppliers and partners area. And we'll note what practices in particular need some attention as we look at the practices in each of these areas. But overall, as we looked at the data, the key management areas were rated higher by those in a management role, large size organization, the business type, the manufacturing general industry sector, and then with regards to specific industry sectors, those in the transportation and storage sector, and the East Asia and Pacific region. And the lowest ratings were found in 3 sectors: education, human health and social work, and public administration, which is government. Here's some memorable comments. It gives you a feel for the kind of information that we get a chance to look at. You've got the role, the size, the type, the specific industry sector, the country. And so you can see what people are commenting on in Brazil and in Australia here. And this information that we get from people's comments is pure gold, because it really gives us an in-depth look at what's going on in an organization, not only on this research, but when we do this kind of work with organizations or industry sectors or a country, it really gives a very detailed view and lets us know what's going well and where we need to concentrate improvement effort. In governance, these are the 6 practices in the governance area, and we see that we're doing quite well in 1.3, which is the governance system meets all those obligations that an organization has: legal, financial, ethical, and reporting. And this is good to see this one out front, because this is the only practice in this area that's applicable to micro-size organizations. So good to see the higher rating there. And of course, need to do a little work on the system of authority, accountability, and control. Again, some comments. These ones are from Canada and Spain. In the leadership area, we have 15 practices. And as you take a look at each of these management areas, it allows us to dive down a little deeper and to see, what's going well and what needs to improve. And these rating scale that we use is much more objective on these practices. It's again 0 to 10, but it's broken down into 4 categories: just beginning, good start, doing well, and high performance. And when we take a look at each of these categories, we're taking a look at the approach that's being used to put the practices in place. Is it a good approach? Is it fully deployed throughout the organization? Or are we getting any results? So it's much more objective. And if I might just say that if an organization that, let's say, has an average of 6 on all these key management areas, or has got, ratings 6 and above, they're doing very well. And in fact, a lot of excellence award winners are usually have got at least 6 on the key management areas and up. And of course, those that are real high performers are in that high performance area, which is in that 7.6 to 10 range. So this just gives you a feel for how organizations around the world are doing. And we see on this that the highest rated practice is develop corporate statements like vision, mission, core values. And the lowest practice is linking senior management rewards and recognition to organizational performance. You want to make sure there's a direct link there between the two. So there's people know that it's important to be keeping an eye on the ball and making sure that you're working towards stronger and stronger performance. So there's a couple other things that are jumping out here: the removing barriers to effectiveness and using risk management to assess your goals and objectives, things that organizations need to be doing a bit more work on. Some memorable comments here from the Philippines and from Germany. It's always interesting to see what people are saying, from a nonprofit or a business organization or a particular sector. It really gives you a view of what's going on. And the level of sophistication, of a country, of an industry sector, and the maturity level that we see, from a micro to a small, medium, and large size organization. And the view, too, by role. Very interesting to see how staff are perceiving things versus management and leadership, or that other role, such as board members. Here we have the planning area, which is one of the lower rated areas. And here we've got the highest rated practice, use factual information for business planning. And the lowest rated practices are develop contingency plans for unforeseen events and conduct a capability gap analysis for resources. And so these are things that will make it lower rated items. These, if you're not got this good practices in place here, this makes it very difficult to respond to changes that occur in the marketplace. And Sarah, here's some memorable comments from the United States and Chile. So you can see what organizations are saying about what's going on in the planning area, where things might be going well, where things need to improve. A lot of respondents were, talked about strengths, like they are preparing a business plan, they are establishing priorities, and they're communicating their plan to their stakeholders, and they're conducting regular reviews and allocating resources. But the real opportunities were that capability gap analysis and reallocating resources to changing circumstances and using performance measures. In the customers area, this is usually a pretty strong area for a lot of organizations that focus on the customer. And so you can see the practices in this area are all rated kind of in the good start, doing well range. And the highest rated practices was aligning employees on the importance of the customer. But lower rated practices using research to define and segment customers and reaffirming presence in your established markets or the requirement to change market approach. What's very interesting to me here is if you are, aligning your employees on the importance of the customer, that's all well and good. But if you can't really describe who your customer is by your research, then there's a little bit of a disconnect there. And same thing with the research on 4.9, reaffirming your presence in the marketplace, and whether you need to change your market approach. That again is a research type of practice that you really need to be taking a look, particularly if you're in the business sector, to keep pace with those in a competitive marketplace. And jumping out here too is that training and empowering employees practice, how important that is, so that they will be able to advocate for customers and serve customers well and so forth. Here's some comments from a small size business and a large size business in Ireland and Hong Kong, respectively. And comments, of course, tell us a little bit about their particular industry sector and what's important when dealing with the customers. But again, those opportunities for improvement that they're, clearly stating. Here's the employees key management area. This had an overall rating of 4.79, and the ratings fell into the good start and doing well kind of ranges. The highest rated practice was ensuring a healthy workplace environment. And in doing that, it's involving people in addressing issues related to health and wellness. And the other high rated practice was encouraging employees to share their ideas and suggestions. That's such a powerful practice. I mean, they both are. Because if your employees are healthy and well, they'll perform better. That really influences productivity. And including them, encouraging them to share their ideas and suggestions is so powerful, because who knows better what needs to improve than employees? They've got great ideas and suggestions. They can be very innovative, and you can really build on that to make some changes in your organization that lend itself very well to improvement. But then again, you've got to have a good system in place to evaluate those ideas and suggestions and work on the ones that make the most sense. There's a book that was written years ago called Ideas Are Free, and I always like that book because it's got a really good system in place that you can take full advantage of. The lowest rated practices in this area were encouraging employees to be innovative and take sort of educated risks, and to remove barriers to employee effectiveness. And this last one is very, very important. What is it, things that we need to get out of the way so employees can do good work? What are some of the dumbest things we do? And employees will, in these open-ended comments, will bring up things that leadership are totally unaware of, and when told about it, often say, oh my goodness, there's something we can do about that right away. We had no idea that was happening. And that happens on every single assessment we do with an individual organization. It's absolutely fascinating. Here's some comments from, in this case, management, large size organization, government, and the human health area in South Africa. and then management and medium-sized business in the accommodation and food service sector in Thailand. On the work processes area, this is an area that most practices were rated in the good start kind of range, and there was one practice in the doing well range, between 5.1 and 7.5. The highest rated practice was taking corrective action when problems occur, but the lowest rated ones were involving stakeholders in designing and analyzing your work processes, and also using external data to compare performance to others. And that last practice is, that is benchmarking, and learning from others. Because inside our organizations, we can be doing good work together, and we can be listening to employees with their suggestions and ideas, and that provides so many opportunities for improvement. It can be very, very powerful. But don't forget to look outside at other role models or high performers, because there's so much you can learn from them too. And I must say, this is, I've noticed when I was sitting on the board of the Global Benchmarking Network that there's a big difference around the world in the countries that benchmark and those that don't. And I must say that North America is very guilty of not doing this. And boy, they're missing out on a lot of opportunities for improvement or learning from others as a result of that. There's other countries and regions that are way ahead in this respect. We're actually going to be doing we're doing some benchmarking reports right now, and we'll be releasing them over the course of this year to talk about, different systems, whether it's the government system or the healthcare system, education, and startup system for businesses. We're going to be taking a look at the best of the best and describing that so that others can take advantage of that good information in the work that they do. Here's some comments. In this case, we've got a medium-sized business in China and a large-size nonprofit in the education sector in the United Kingdom. So you clearly see what's going on in these particular organizations. Here's the suppliers and partners area. This was the other low-rated key management area. And you can see as these, most of the practices in each key management areas are in a bit of a chronological order, right? And so it's very interesting to see the results on this particular key management area, because they start with a higher rating, go right down to the lowest rating. So we see that organizations are pretty good at selecting their suppliers and partners on the basis of criteria. But they could do a little bit more work in working closely with their suppliers and partners when it comes to their planning efforts, taking a look at new products and services that can be provided, and taking a look at their social and environmental standards, and not just meeting them, but maybe going beyond them as a real differentiator out there in the marketplace. And some comments here from, medium-sized business in the United States in the construction area, and also a small-sized nonprofit in the human health area in Australia. In the resource management area, there's eight practices here, and most practices are falling in the good start to doing well range. The highest rated practices are define resource requirements and manage the security of your resources. But the lowest were identifying alternative and emerging technology and the related cost benefit to the organization and society, and also preparing for resource interruptions. And it's very interesting on the technology side. I think we see a lot of organizations adopting technology. Unfortunately, they don't make sure that technology is helping them work better or serve their customers better sometimes. So they're forgetting that plan, do, study, act cycle. when they're evaluating technology. They're eager to adopt, but boy, you really need to make sure that that technology is serving you well, because you know what it's like as a customer. You're on the receiving end of some technology, and sometimes it's very frustrating to do business with a given organization because of that. So this is an area that organizations need to pay more attention to. And you can see the link about preparing for resource interruptions in this resource management area back to, in the planning area, the contingency planning. And there's interrelationships between the practices and the principles of this framework, because those practices will influence the principles directly. And there's also interrelationships between certain practices with other practices. We've got those all identified in the Organizational Excellence Framework publication, which you can download at no charge. So you have a better understanding of that. And the interrelated, interconnected nature of an excellence model. And it's like a system. It's like you're in health. It's like your body. It's all these things in the system have to be performing well before the body performs well. So it's the same thing in organizations if we look at them as a system. There's some comments on the resource management area from the government in France. And then, of course, in the information and communication area in India. Continuous improvement, this is the use of the plan, do, study cycle to take a look at each of these key management areas and see where to focus effort. You can't do all things at once, so you have to choose what you need to work on, let's say this year and the next year and the year after that. And we really like to, when we do an assessment and a report, we like to provide these individual action plans to leaders so they can assign employees to the things that need to be done, because you can accelerate improvement a lot faster that way. And in this case, you can see that the top 4 key management areas, organizations are doing not too bad, but it's the bottom 4 where there probably needs to be a little bit more effort placed. More work needs to be done. And so when we take a look at the use of performance measures in each of these key management areas, we can see where organizations are using measures and maybe need to do a little bit more work with particular measures. And for micro-size organization, there's only 4 measures that we recommend with micro-size from 1 to 25 employees, and that's the quality of the product or service, the customer's level of customer satisfaction, also the level of employee satisfaction, and then of course financial performance. So it's good to see if those measures are being used in most organizations, and then the larger size organizations, they are wanting to have a few more measures that really then provide them with good feedback on the way the organization is performing and help them to make decisions. And here's where we say those measures for the organization as a whole, and we can see that those measures I just mentioned are actually a little bit higher rated, with the exception of employee satisfaction. And then there's another measure, employee morale, that's actually a little on the low side too. And these are not measures that should be lower, because who is the heartbeat of your organization? Who is the gas that provides fuel for that engine? This is a very important area, and it's very interesting to see how employee satisfaction and employee morale are a little bit lower rated. It's an indication that organizations aren't taking as close a look at that as they should. And here's some comments from the human health sector in Switzerland and the water supply area in Brazil. Also, we've got comments from the manufacturing sector in Mexico, and electricity sector in Germany. And yet a few more comments here from education sector in South Korea and the professional sector in the United Arab Emirates. So overall, as we look at all these aggregate ratings, we saw the ratings on the principles to be very similar on the teaser and the full assessment, which is great. We see where the higher ratings are on particular principles and lower ratings are on the couple of principles as well. We see also a significant drop between the ratings on the principles and the key management areas. There's about a 1 point difference if we take a look at the average on the principles and the key management areas. And it's very interesting. We're using a subjective scale on the principles, and we're using a more objective scale on the key management areas and the practices. So, and we're diving down a lot deeper in the key management areas into those 102 practices. So it's very interesting when respondents are taking a closer look at their organization. It's no surprise really that the numbers drop, but I think it's pretty safe to say in organizations that are very high performing, the principles are rated higher, as are the key management areas. So that's another thing to look for as an organization in terms of your level of maturity. And here in the key management areas, we've got a couple areas that were rated the highest and a couple rated the lowest. And overall, we see the higher ratings were provided by those in another role, so those board members out there, large size organizations, business, manufacturing, specific sector being transportation and storage, and the East Asia and Pacific region. And here's a look at all the high responding countries. These are the ones that have 25 or more respondents, and we're actually getting pretty close with quite a number of other countries that are very close to that 25 mark. Bangladesh, Brazil, Cameroon, Colombia, Greece, Kenya, Latvia, Malaysia, Mexico, Nigeria, Portugal, Syria, Tanzania, Trinidad and Tobago, Tunisia, United Kingdom, and Vietnam. So it's very interesting for me when I look at these high responding countries. We've got researchers doing a real good job at attracting respondents, but I think it also provides a bit of insight about who is really interested in excellence, in becoming the best they can be. And so this is where we see who's keen to respond to this, who wants to know how their organization measures up to high performing organizations. And I think they're also very motivated to know, how do we compare to others? And then next, after that, to me, it's how do we learn from those role model organizations and maybe some of the areas where we need to improve. So here's a breakdown of the highest responding countries and where their overall aggregate ratings are on the principles. And so we can take a look. The highest overall is India. Highest rating across all principles, India, with the exception of focus on the customer, being the United States. And as you look at the standard deviation on the ratings, you see a larger standard deviation on the ratings for leadership involvement, and the smallest for partnership development. So that's a very interesting statistic. You see where organizations really differ in their ratings, or they're closer. Most countries are pretty close to or above the world overall average, but Botswana is trailing a little bit behind. But there's a reason for this too. Canada and the USA were two of the four leading models that were first introduced way back in about 1990, and where organizations in those countries were invited to use the models to improve their performance. India followed shortly thereafter, and our good colleague Suresh Lula in India, he's been making a real difference there for decades now. So India was got into the excellence game shortly after those 4 leading models. And more recently, the UAE, about 10 years ago, government wanted to really become a more high-performing government. And so there's been incredible work being done there in terms of making government more high-performing. And that commitment to excellence has been, infused in the rest of the country. And the same thing with India. I've talked to people in India, and there's been a growing commitment there to excellence and realizing that they can be whatever they want to be in terms of a high-performing organization. And it's well infused into the culture. Botswana, on the other hand, is new to the excellence game. They do have a government that's very interested in excellence, which is fantastic. So they're starting good work in this area. They're, all these countries, they've got to kind of move through a maturity arc, from let's get started on this to let's become more mature and fully mature. So this is just an example of that, but very interesting to see that India's out in front. When they weren't part of the 4 leading excellence models, you had Canada, the United States, Europe, and Australia were the leading excellence models that got all this off to a good start back in around 1990, and other models used around the world have been built on those models, or they've used the same models. And it's very interesting to see. And the organizational excellence framework, of course, this is the only model that says, okay, let's put all these principles and practices into one place so that we can benefit by the 4 leading models and not be differentiated by, little nuances here and there. So it's a good resource for the foundational model, what you want to have in place that's common to a high-performing organization. And here are the highest responding countries on the key management areas. And again, we've got the ratings in a good start and doing well range. The highest overall rating on each key management area is, again, India. And the largest standard deviation on the ratings was for continuous improvement. And the smallest was for suppliers and partners. Most countries, again, are close to or above the world average. And the world average was 4.95. So that gives you an idea of, where countries are sitting compared to the overall world average. And Botswana, of course, is a little lower, but, they're just getting started. So we'll see how things progress year after year after year. And there's great work being done in Botswana by a couple of our professionals that are working with the government and business sector and working to educate other professionals there. And so I expect to see great strides. And, we've got actually in other African countries, we've got, professionals in about 5 or 6 African countries. There's keen interest there now about excellence overall, I think, on the continent. In Canada, it's been interesting. I can speak to that directly. Back in about 1990, they came out with a Canadian model, one of the leading models. They were providing government funding, and there was a great upsurge in this sort of work with a national entity and a number of provincial entities. But once that funding ceased, there weren't many that could keep themselves alive. And so we're just down to a national entity now and a couple of provincial entities. And it's like leaders, I think, they kind of gravitate to the latest flavor of the week, and they think that, oh, let's do lean, or let's do Six Sigma, or let's do this or that, the latest, greatest thing. They forget, or they don't really know that it's these principles and these best management practices across these key management areas that will deliver a formula for success, because we see it in the research and we see it in all of our work that when you implement these practices, you develop a culture committed to excellence, and you go on to achieve exceptional results across the balanced system of measurement. It's very formulaic. It's been proven over and over and over again. And we've got lots of role model organizations that provide examples of that. So look no further. This is something that's really, really important. And we want to make sure that all leaders know about this so they can use it to their full advantage. Because you can power not only the improving of performance of an organization, and that organization will hire more people, buy more goods and services, donate to good causes, but it is also better able to trade with others. And all of that trickles into your resident quality of life. So it can have an absolutely huge and positive impact. So you need to pay attention to that, whether it's an organization or scaled to an industry sector or scaled to a national level. And we're hoping this study is very influential in helping all countries to be able to participate in the world economy. So one step at a time. And this is giving us a view of where those countries are doing well, where they need to do some work as well. And if we were to dive down into industry sectors, let's say for Canada or India or United States or UAE or what have you, we get even a different picture. It's a more detailed picture. And then at the organization level, it's different yet, because every organization is a little different in terms of what's going well and what needs to improve. So very important that people take a good close look at these numbers and focus on what it is they need to do as an organization, maybe as a collective group in an industry sector, or as a country, if you've got leaders looking at how can we better our performance, improve our economy. This work answers a lot of very important questions. So with that, I'll say thank you very much for your kind attention, and I'll end the presentation and the recording, and then we can turn to questions and answers and discussion. Thank you very much.